Good day, everyone. This is your host, Paul Lawrence Van. I'm glad that you could be with me. And of course, this is all about leadership being influenced. And I've already had the introductory video that has been posted, and I'm going to follow up today with talent challenges. In other words, employees and what that has to do with leadership function itself. So I hope that you're doing great. I'll give you a little bit more background on myself today. Again, Paul Lawrence Van, I'm a leadership expert. I'm a leadership development workshop consultant, as well as a two-time #1 international best-selling author and podcast host. I also host a Wealth Academy podcast, which I've had for 2.5 years now. So I'm almost at the 3-year point for that. And so this particular podcast is new, but it calls to my strength, which is leadership. And of course, I've served over 20 years in the United States Air Force. I was a military officer, retired with the rank of lieutenant colonel, having worked at the Pentagon for over 12 years, and as a Capitol Hill fellow, working for a member of Congress in the U.S. House of Representatives. So as you can tell, I had a lot of fun. So now in the second chapter of my life, I'm delving into the speaking business because that's what Wealth Building Academy is all about. And I'm also focusing in again on leadership. I also work in that area of diversity and inclusion. And that's something that I provided training throughout the US and Canada as well. But leadership is what it's all about today. And I don't have to tell you, you already know with the great resignation how things unfolded for the economy and for businesses over the past 2.5 years. And so the talent challenge is the biggest one. We do know that the U.S. government had went through a shutdown, if you will, and not only us, but other countries in the world as well. And so the companies allowed the employees to work at home because it was the safest thing to do at the time. And we lost a lot of people in the United States, over 1 million people, and we're still losing people now and in other countries also. But the talent is really what it's all about. There was remote employees, even impacting the Pentagon, where I worked for 12 years, which is unheard of, but it had to happen, and it did. And so today, what I'm going to be talking about in this particular episode, and again, this podcast is all about leadership and leadership being a leader of influence. But what this episode takes into account today is the talent challenges. And we know that we have them because there's hybrid workplaces, meaning some people have to come to the office to work part of the week and then work from home, on that laptop. And then there's some that are just working home. That's what they do all the time. And so all manner of businesses change. Even for the speaking industry, it's changed because more people, more companies are going for the virtual workshops and speeches as opposed to in person. And they found out that it saves a lot of money and it's more productive in many cases as well, not only here in the US, but from around the world. And so today I'm going to get into some of the talent challenges that exist. And one of the key aspects of for companies and leadership in particular is retaining the top talent. Employees really have the advantage, if you will, of being able to call their own shots, meaning they can ask for more income, they can have more flexibility in their work each day and where they work from, and it's really working. I guess it's something that was in the works in the first place, but now it's really in full effect. And then, of course, corporations have to adjust to the new environment, the hybrid environment. Again, working from home, working in the office, and getting employees to be able to come back and work in their jobs or which they were hired for. I think one interesting aspect for all of us is that we used the example of the U.S. federal government. And in many ways, that is a contract between the government agency, let's say, for example, Department of Energy, or you have the Department of Interior, just as a couple of examples. And you had employees prior to the pandemic that were working in offices and office space. So all the people in many of the organizations went home to work, and with the leadership mostly coming to the office every day, and they would have to report in for the same work. And so that building, there's a lease on those buildings. So there were losses taking place because the buildings weren't occupied. And we can use the Washington, D.C. government as an example. When the employees didn't come back, the price of the lease that the office space they're using actually increased, but the employees didn't return. And so it created quite a challenge, not only for them, but for businesses as well, major corporations and small businesses. And so we have to deal with that and try to work around it and navigate it. And now people are tending to drift back in, if you will. But some do not want to give it up, and that some have decided to not return to work, and they're starting their own business, becoming entrepreneurs. And again, this all goes back to leadership. Leadership is the key to all of this. And then we have to understand, what do the employees want? The employees want what they want. I just couldn't help saying that, but employees are going to advocate on their own best interests. If you have working moms, a lot of them lost their jobs during the pandemic, and because they didn't want to weigh their children being at risk, the children at home, they couldn't, of course, afford the daycare once returned to office. And so many of them decided to stay home, and they're starting their own businesses or side hustles, if you will. And it plays a major role, but the employees really have the upper hand today. If you give them a choice of, well, you come into the office and work, or you lose your job, well, most people have decided not to go back and return to work. And so again, leadership has to work with this and do the very best that they can, while the employees really have to look out for their best interests. Because you see, we're not only working with what happened with the pandemic, but we can all remember in 2008, 2009, 2010 timeframe, we had the Great Recession, and many people lost their jobs. The economy basically folded, and millionaires were standing in food lines, and it was just not a good time. And so we're dealing with different conflicts. We had a war that was taking place, and it's really a lot. So it's not surprising, if you will, to see how employees are responding to this, because when you really get down to it, they want to have more control of their lives, and really can't fault them for that. And people, I guess, in many ways, if we looked at it, are doing the very best that they can. And so now, what do leadership do? What do the head of the company, or the president, or executive vice president, the leadership staff, what do they do? What do the managers do? And what do the employees do? Because they're all interconnected. It's like a seat, and it has three-legged stool. And you have the leadership, you have the managers, and you have the employees, and they all are interdependent of one another. And so one has to look at the reality and what career path are leadership or is leadership providing for their employees. Are they giving them the ability to work from home? They're giving them more vacation time. If they expecting children, are they giving them leave? Are they receiving leave for that? Is there promotion ability, being able to be promoted up the line in terms of being from an employee to a manager, or into the leadership role itself, or will they become a partner, depending on what type of company it is, a law firm or accounting firm, something of that nature, consultancy. And so there are many ways of looking at this. And so we have to look at what is the career development that's being put in place to assist these employees. And a lot of what this information that I'm sharing with you today is coming from the Brandon Hall Group. And they've conducted a in-depth research talking to many leaders at many companies of all sizes, and they're getting the handle or assessment of where things are today and how companies can move forward in the future. And I'm fortunate enough to be working with a group, an organization that's focused in on leadership or and talent management is actually one of them. So the talent challenge that I'm talking about today impacts all organizations, both large and small. And then you want to look at the ability to understand the competencies that are needed in the future, the skill sets that are there. One of the things that I really want to talk about and maybe have you focus on as you listen to this is a lot of upskilling is needed, especially after the recent pandemic. So the skill levels fall a little bit off because you're not going through the routine or the standardized skill set that ones need. And we know 24 months to 36 months after anything, changes are going to come. Changes are coming with technology. Changes are coming with how people communicate. Changes coming with how organization, how it communicates with one another. And so we know we're trying to build that bridge for teamwork within an organization because it's the teamwork that helps the business performance overall. So it's incumbent, and I stated it in the introductory video, that the leader, a good leader, is one who develops other employees within his organization, his or her organization, to also become a leader of influence. So you want to give them the opportunity to be put in a leadership position on different projects. We want them to receive some training, and we want them to be a vital part, a cog in the wheel, if you will, of the organization. And that's when you retain really good employees. And I think it's very important that this is given consideration. And then we want to look at how the demographics are changing. So, is there something that's in place to help develop a diverse workforce or pipeline? In other words, a lot of people, when they think about diversity, oftentimes they're just thinking about the ethnicity of an individual, but it's much more than that. It's things such as what type of education does an individual have, and they can be in the same ethnic group. Or is it, were they a veteran? Was the person in a union before? Was the person in a blue collar job before? Is the person married? And so there are a lot of different aspects that go into diversity. And I always like to use this example. I'm one of 10 children born to my beautiful parents who've departed to the heavenlies, but there were 5 boys and 5 girls in their family. And I'm the oldest son. And again, as I state, there were 10 of us. And guess what? All of us are diverse, even though we're from the same family. We like different food. We have different friends. We like different movies, different books. Um, and we like to travel to different places. So there's diversity in everything. It doesn't have to be just based on ethnicity, but it's more so in experience, the experience that people have each and every day. Some people like to travel, some don't. Some people like working on a computer. Some don't. Some like working indoors. Some like working outdoors. And so when we talk about diversity, we're talking about the full complement of an individual's experience. Again, it could be, it's not limited to gender either, because when it comes to gender, there's strengths and weaknesses on both side of a man and a woman. And what we seek to do is to strengthen those weaknesses and make those strengths even stronger. And that strength may be becoming a leader of influence, being intertwined with the management and the leadership of a company or organization in order to play a vital and a larger role in that company's success. No one really wants to leave a company that they really enjoy the work and the associates and colleagues that they work with. But sometimes when a person is pushed into the corner, they may not choose to return to work. And it's something that we definitely want to be cognizant of. One of the things I often think about is, how did I get my start in understanding leadership? Well, I shared that on a post I have on social media that, again, I'm from a family of 10 children. So I saw leadership displayed by both of my parents every day, whether I liked it or not. But I learned responsibility, I learned accountability, and that's not all. My older sister and I, we would take care of our younger siblings while our parents were at work after school. And then I was put in our family store to manage the store at the age of 10. And then it went on for me for high school. And I played high school football, which is actually in support of our community. So it wasn't just being on a football team, but it was representing the community and town that I was from. I also participated on the track team. Then I decided I would go to college. And so I decided I was going to go to the 2 year Air Force ROTC, well, the 6 week Air Force ROTC encampment that led to me being in a 2 year Air Force ROTC program at Shaw University as cross enrolled at North Carolina State for 2 years to do that. So I was gaining and gaining more understanding of leadership and what it was all about. I learned the history of the Air Force, survival training, marksmanship, flying on an aircraft for the first time, and then flying an aircraft, doing basic training in a two-seater with an instructor pilot. Some unique experiences which entail leadership from start to finish. And that's not all. I went on to serve over 20 years in the Air Force, 12 consecutive years in the Pentagon, and 1 year on Capitol Hill in the Capitol Hill Fellowship Program. So there's leadership taking place all around me, and I embraced it. And so I'm sharing that with you through this podcast, and I'm honored to do so. And I just want to let you know, just as I shared my experience with you, a broad brush, if you will, you also have similar experiences. And so, what I'm saying, if I could do it, I know that you can do it. And I'm really empowering you, and I'm really inspiring and motivating you to reach deep down inside and work towards becoming a leader, even if you don't have the title. Because even if a person is in a leadership role and they have the title, it doesn't mean that they're a good leader. A good leader, as defined, is one who is not afraid to give his managers or employees leadership responsibilities. In fact, they want to develop them. That's the sign of a good leader. So, if a man or woman is in a leadership position, if they're not willing and they don't trust you to be in that leadership position, taking on leadership roles, then they're not a good leader. And I'll tell them if I was speaking to them. If I knew that they weren't, I'll let them know, because I've seen good leaders over the course of my life, and I know the difference between a good leader and a not so good leader. And it's all a part of their experience. So let's get back to the talent challenges. Coaching and providing feedback to employees is very important. In fact, a study goes on to say that 60% of employees state that their managers or leaders do not coach them properly. And it's one of the reasons why they will leave. Because if you can't coach an employee to perform better and show the way and lead the way, then that's grounds for them leaving and going somewhere else. So I behoove all of you managers and the leaders, the leadership structure that's above you, to put this as one of the primary aspects, because there's a difference between managing and coaching. We get far more from coaching an individual than we do managing them, because there's a tendency to manage too much. And one of my heroes or sheroes in life is the late Admiral Grace Hooper. And she is one of the foremost proponents of COBOL and languages that people work on computers to this day. But this is what she said in the leadership class that I was attending at Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama. It was the Squadron Officers School, and this is her comment. She said, "We are to manage resources and things, but we are to lead people. We have gone far too long just managing people, and we've forgotten about leading people." And what she's saying is that leadership is really the key to it. Managing, not so much. That's the late Admiral Grace Hopper, who I really admire to this day, and something that I would never forget. I was a young captain at that time, and she made a great impression on me. And I know there are leaders in your life that you admire as well. And if you can call on them in terms of some things that you've heard them say or quote you've seen written about them, hold on to that for your life and become a leader of influence as well. Now, one of the other things that we look at when it comes to talent challenges is linking learning performance and career development and succession. In other words, we want to look at the full spectrum of the lifetime of an employee. And so that employees' work life is also a part of their personal life. And so we want to give them the best experience, get them trained, give them that leadership responsibility, recommend they read books or they watch movies that talk about leadership, because it's all about life in business or personally, it's all about learning. And you have to look at, where do you want your business to be? Do you want to work for a mediocre company, or do you want to work for one of the best workplaces to work at type company? And I know it's the latter, because that's what I would want, and I know that you want the same. And then you want to ultimately to develop high performing teams. So you have your organization, and let's say when I worked in that acquisition management area, we had a program manager. I functioned as the financial manager or cost analyst for the team. We had people in logistics. We had contracting personnel and much, much more. And our decision, a decision we had to come in was, who do we select to develop this program for the United States Air Force? So we had what we call source selection teams. So they would pull a member from each of those different directorates, and we would review all the contracts from, let's say, 10 to 15 contracts, and we would evaluate who could perform the contract on schedule, within the budget, if they're properly aligned with the proper number of personnel to execute or to produce the product, with the data that they provide us, with that data be accurate to what we needed, and deliver the particular product in our service. And so those are some of the things that we looked at. And you can't do that unless you're trained to do that. And so I would attend different courses and other people at the Air Force Institute of Technology. And we would learn how to perform these assessments and then go visit the prospective contractor's plant in some cases and see them. And then once the person is selected for the contract, we would actually go out there and see that process working. And so there were some companies that I led a team. There were some companies that we did not select them. It was a $3.3 billion contract, and those are the tough decisions, but those are decisions that save the taxpayers money. And so we always have to look at and consider these things. So I'm going to share a little bit more about the talent acquisition side, but when I'm sharing these personal stories with you, what this means is that it's the employees and the talent challenges from yesterday, meaning maybe a couple of decades ago, to today has changed dramatically. But let's look at the number one issues that companies are dealing with today. Number one is talent retention. That stands in at about 57% based on this survey that was recently conducted. Employee engagement was number two. So employees want to know what the management and leadership of the company, what they're talking about. They want to know the vision. They want to know the direction and the goal of the organization. So they want engagement. They also want to be able to communicate with their managers about what their career aspirations are, and then to move forward on it. If I need training in a certain area, they want to get training for it. If they want to go out and have some experience with some of the subcontractors they work with, they want to go out and do that. But it's really about that employee engagement. And then diversity of the talent pipeline comes in at about 52%. In other words, there's strength in diversity. And again, I'm not talking about a person's race or ethnicity. I'm talking about the diversity of their experience, whether it's a man or a woman. That's really what I'm talking about. And we really need to get away from looking at the ethnicity of a person, but more so looking at the talents, skills, and abilities of the individual as a whole. The next issue is effectively managing hybrid workforce. That comes in at about 51% in terms of the consideration or concern that companies and organizations are having today. And so we want to really uh, pay close attention to these things. And then the next is learning and development. We have to get our employees, our managers, and in many cases, our leadership team, get them trained up. Because just because a person is in a position doesn't mean that they have experience in it. And so we want to have everybody on the same sheet of music, everyone trained together. I'll give you an example. When it comes to, if you were asked most companies about the leadership, not only at the headquarters, but out at the different plants, facilities, or physical space that people work in, the odds are that they do not have the same leadership training. They have different training provided by different organizations. But if they really want to become a successful team, the key is to have everyone trained in the same system. It should be more of a standardized system as opposed to generic systems. The headquarters receive training from this company, the regional office from another company, and then a local office from yet another. So they all need to be lockstep, the same training. And it is something that everyone should do. So training, leadership development, and development is really comes in at about 50% in terms of this survey. The next thing is leader development. And I mentioned that before. The leader needs to be trained. The leader needs to also be asking questions about, well, are my managers trained? And then are my employees trained? And if there aren't, they should be in a position to get them trained and put it in that budget, work with HR and their senior vice presidents and get this done. The next item is team development. The team is everything because it's the team that does the work. And so, again, when we look at that three legged stool, we have the leaders. The leader, I behoove you to train your managers and to take the next step. Managers, have your employees trained because it's all about that team. And if you want to be a high performing team, then you need to have everyone trained, everyone that's in lockstep, following the vision, the goals, and the mission of the organization itself. And the next is career development. That comes in at 45% in terms of talent functions posing the highest challenges for employers. And so you want to look at having a career path for an individual. There's nothing better than having goals, but what's better than having goals is taking the action steps. So position your from day one when you hire an employee. And so, as a part of that talent acquisition piece, ensure that you have a plan, have HR, have the manager sit down with that employee, and you talk to them about what their career is. And I'll take you back to another personal story. When I was in the Air Force, I had served 8 years, but one of my dreams was to work for a Fortune 500 company. And lo and behold, I was interviewed by 12 companies, and it came down between Michelin Tire in Greenville, South Carolina, and with Mobil Oil in Beaumont, Houston, Texas. And so I decided to move forward with. I would be performing accounting duties for Michelin Tire, and I would be performing financial management or financial analysis with Mobil. So I chose financial analysis, and so I have a picture of my first day. I'm talking to the HR manager. The manager comes in, my manager comes in from the accounting department and financial management department, and they sit down and they map out a plan for me. And they put me in training in probably 3 or 4 months. So I had my very first training. Very first training was um, ethics program. And they sent me to Rosalind, Virginia, or what we call uh, Tyson's Corner, Virginia. And for 2 weeks, we went through this ethics for managers. And I went through that course. So right away, they took me in and they showed me the career path and then how I could reach that goal. And I stayed with Mobile for 2 years, and then I was recalled back for Desert Shield, Desert Storm. And so I was brought back into the military, and eventually I retired. But from Mobile Oil standpoint, they were ready to develop me. And the Air Force came and they really developed me when I came back in. So I'm thankful for both of them. The next thing on the list is wellness and well-being. We know that we've been through a lot with this pandemic, and a lot of people suffered. Some people didn't get the vaccine, but health and wellness is not only on the personal side, but on the professional side. So for example, for me, working in the Pentagon, we had what we call the POAC, or the Pentagon Officers Athletic Club. And I became a member of that. So weightlifting, I would run from the Pentagon to Capitol Hill. So it was an 8-mile round trip. I lifted weights. I participated on team triathlons in the Caribbean against 20 other countries. And so putting in wellness programs is a great benefit to the employees. So what's happening is that the leaders of these companies now are finding that that's really important to people. And last but not least, we're looking at workforce planning and succession management. It comes in at 44% in terms of the talent functions posing highest challenges for employers. And so, as you can see, what I covered today, I'm giving you just a greater insight into what organizations are experiencing today. And it continues to evolve. And when we look at the tech industry, and we're looking at not 5,000, but 10,000 employees being put out of work. And typically, what's going to happen, some of those people are retirement eligible, but for most people, they'll start their own business, or they'll work for the federal government or the state government. Where there is a will, people will find a way. But again, this is the second episode of Leadership is Influence. And I'm your host, Paul Lawrence Van. And for those of you who will listen to this a little bit later, just know that today I talk about the talent challenges that corporations, small businesses, entrepreneurs are facing. Again, the number one issue is retaining top talent, then adjusting to the new hybrid work environment. And that has even impacted me, because I can do a lot of times a company want me to come in and deliver a virtual program as opposed to in person. And then we're understanding what employees want, looking at career pathing and assisting employees with career development, which I already mentioned is very important, and understanding the skills and competency needed in the future. They're going to be more technology, but the end result is going to be that employee management and leadership engagement. It is the essence of high performance teams. And then building a diverse talent pipeline, again, not just focusing on ethnicity, but the totality of the talent, of the knowledge, the skills, and abilities of employees. And then we're looking at coaching and the importance of coaching and providing feedback to employees, because the employees today, especially when we look at Gen Z, they're a lot different than baby boomers or the other millennials. They're totally different. So the management and leadership of them is going to be different as well. And a lot of the Gen Z, they take charge. They're not going to wait around for management and leadership to tell them what to do. They have a project, they'll move out on it, and then they'll tell you when they have those results into you. But so don't be surprised, but it's something to keep your eye out for. And then we're looking at linking learning, performance, career development, and succession. And last but not least, developing high performing teams. Again, I'm your host, Paul Lawrence Van, and I want you to understand that you can always contact me, and I've posted it here at my website, www.paulvanspeaks.com, and then my email, info@paulvanspeaks.com. You can always give me a call toll free at 800 341-6719. And I look forward to connecting with you in the future. And send me an email and let me know what you think about this particular episode. Again, you can do that at info@paulvanspeaks.com. And I would love to hear from you. And I look forward to providing more episodes in the future. And there is a lot to cover. So thank you so much. And I'll see you on the next episode. So, but before I go, I challenge you. I really challenge you to become the best leader that you can become, whether you have the title or not. You don't have to be a manager or the CEO or president of the company, but it's your leadership that is going to move the organization forward. Because when it comes to developing and maximizing human potential, you will also increase the bottom line of your organization. And we want to, the number one job is talent retention, employee retention. That's the number one return on investment that corporations are looking for today. So I'll see you on the next episode and have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for listening, and recommend it to your supervisor, your leadership, your colleagues and friends. Thank you so much.